Wired Axcess.
We'll do it live.
Wired Axcess.
Do it live.
Wired Axcess.
We'll do it live.
Wired Axcess.
Welcome to Wired Axcess Podcast. I'm your host, DJ K-Dub Omaha. Remember, we're a part of that Heard at One, which is where we love to get to tell the stories beyond the sport, beyond the job, and kind of dig deep so you can get to know people, athletes on a different level, and hopefully that one parent, one athlete, or someone will see something in the interview that they go, man, that is currently where I'm at. How can I get over it? And hear people how they get over those obstacles or the routes that they go. Today, we are recording with, he wears multiple hats, okay? And for me, I first saw you when you were doing like Bellevue Leader stuff, Gretna, whatever their newspaper.
Gretna Breeze.
Papillion
Times, yeah.
But now you are strictly, right, for Council Bluffs, Daily
Nonpareil. Yep.
And we have Peter Burtnett here. And Peter, I tell you, man, what I love about what you do is you're a former athlete who saw what you could do and what you couldn't do. And I think nowadays it's hard because everybody sees all the limelight of athletes and they're like, I want to be that guy. Talent is talent and athletes are athletes, and you can try and you might be able to make it, but find that time when you go from being an athlete to reporting athletes. It's kind of a mental change, right? Like you grew up in Ohio.
Yep.
Which I just had my daughter go back to Ohio for college, for law school. That's a long ways away. It's over 12 hours.
Yeah.
You end up graduating from college at Dayton.
University of Dayton, correct.
University of Dayton. So you stay in Ohio. But now you're over here in Iowa. You're on the other side of the whole, a little on the other side of the Midwest, as some would say.
Right.
What all do you remember, like, of your playing sports? You went to a private school, right? Over
for high
public?
school, yeah.
What was that like for you?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm very, very fortunate to be here today. Very, very glad to be here and be on the show. So going back to playing sports, I mean, baseball was the one that I played all the way through from T-ball when I was actually my family was living in Michigan at the time, all the way through, a couple other moves, ended up back in Ohio, playing at the high school level. Growing up, I played for my dad a few years here and there. He didn't always coach me, but he coached a couple of seasons, won a championship actually in Little League with him and my brother all on the same team, because my brother and I are about a year and a half apart. My dad was the coach for that team, so that was a really fun team to be a part of. I think I was maybe around like 5th grade, around that age at the time. And then got into high school. He coached me a couple years there, and then also just at the school that I was going to, where my mom was a teacher. So we were fortunate to be able to go to that school and be able to get that private Christian school education. So that was definitely a blessing. Got to play baseball there. It was a small school, so a lot of opportunities. It was just kind of one of those things where as long as you take that opportunity, you're kind of going to have it. I'll be honest, I didn't have to probably work as hard for it as some people do, just because of being fortunate to be at a smaller school. But played baseball, played a little bit of basketball, and 1 year of soccer as well there, just because it was one of those smaller schools where you kind of need people to fill multiple, like you said, wear multiple
Play those hats.
Exactly. So soccer, actually, I had never really played before, for example. And I had some friends that were in my class that had played for a team 2 years ago, in like my sophomore year of high school, 2 years before. And then my senior year, we didn't even have a soccer team my junior year. And some of these friends of mine were like, we're trying to get more people to come out. We need, athletes that can come out and play this sport. And I was like, you know what? These people are my friends. And it was co-ed soccer, believe it or not. So that was definitely interesting. That was kind of just,
Well, yeah, because I don't think you're going to shoulder shrug a lady, right?
Right.
Especially as a senior in high school, you're like, there's legacies I want to leave.
Right.
Taking out the girl on the other team was not the legacy I was looking for in my senior year.
Yeah, not exactly. But I mean, it was cool just having teammates, and those girls were really talented. I remember maybe one of the first games of the season. I don't remember if it was a scrimmage or a regular season game, but kind of I played winger, sending across to one of the girls, and she was there to finish it in for a goal. So I remember that being one of the moments. And then that team was pretty good. We were kind of around 500, and we challenged a pretty good team in kind of the first round of the state playoffs, and ended up losing, but it was a 1-0 close loss against a good team. So those are some of the memories I have. And then obviously baseball, like I was starting to talk about, was the big thing for me. I mean, mostly played kind of second base, kind of middle infielder. I don't quite have I don't know if you're picking it up too much on the video. I don't have the height of like a shortstop, but I played middle infield. So
I was gonna say there's a couple things that most second base have.
Right.
They're normally one of the shortest.
Yeah.
They're possibly a coach's son sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah.
And they don't have they're okay with it because they know they get their opportunity, and they know that they don't have a lot of big responsibilities, because you have those shortstops that want to fill the whole middle. You have the first base that's like, get the heck out of my way, and you're like, well, I guess I'll back you up if you need it, or I'll back you. It's a weird position, but it's still needed, right? Like you need someone, and like you said, you kind of knew where you were in baseball. You love it, you play it, but you know where you're at, and that's the best part, because you're still a part of the team, and you're still doing your part, right?
Yeah, well, and being part of the team, something else that kind of fell to me. So after my junior year, we had kind of our main catcher graduate. And it was kind of a hole. We didn't really have anybody who was on the team coming back from my senior year that really had ever caught before. We had a freshman who was coming in, but he didn't quite know all the ropes of catching and all that sort of thing. Hadn't been even around the game of baseball, I don't think, like his whole life or anything like that. So that was a situation where I knew for the betterment of the team that it might be something that I could do. You know, I had been around the game. I had pitched, in Little League, because I might not have had the height, but I had the talent growing up to be able to fill in a place like that. And so I knew kind of that side of it, having that pitcher catcher, the battery as they call it. So I knew that it would be an opportunity for me to step in there. And so I kind of took in that catcher role a little bit, while kind of shifting back between there and second base, and even pitching a little bit. So that was interesting experience for sure, going from, standing up for the whole game, for either in the outfield or pitching, or in in one of the infield positions, to catching, being down in that squat for a whole game. So that was definitely, I would say, more of a physical challenge than it was a mental challenge or anything like that. But it was something that honestly wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be. I think it's just because I dedicated myself to it and wound up, being pretty successful. And especially at the plate that season, I had struggled kind of my first 3 years of just always trying to do a little bit too much with the bat.
People don't talk about it. They're like, oh no, they're just not a good hitter. No, you don't understand the mental for baseball, and that's what I've always told anybody. Like, baseball is one of the hardest games mentally on an athlete, because you try to perfect things, and as many say it before, and they'll continue to say it, 300 is good, right? Yeah,
exactly. For
hitting
a hitter,
3 out of 10 is good, but failing on your mental,
failing 7 out of 10 times is still good.
You're like, nah, I can't do that. And of course, for me, catcher, like, that hits me at home, because that was my position. Why? I like to talk stuff to the players, and then I also am the one, hence why I do what I do, where you get the crowd involved, because you're the guy that is closest that they could talk to, but also you can cheer, get them louder. But you fill in those roles, and you think, and I mean, even look at what you're doing now. Having to change to something that different of what you're doing should help in the hard roles that I think people don't know involve covering sports.
Right.
Being the guy who can adjust, who can change, who can adapt, who can go, you know what, I'm there. Because the more times you've probably said that you're there nowadays continues to grow what you're growing in the future for yourself, because being in this industry isn't easy. It's not for the ones that are the weak. It's not, and I have nothing about anybody who's tried and hasn't failed or has failed, but it's not always your adventure. It's the adventure that you're given by the people that trust in you. It's the adventure of the sports that is very uncontrollable. And it's not always, something that has a gift on the backside that you're like, oh yeah, everybody's just so happy. You're like, you just continue that grind.
Yeah.
So you get through that change of going through that catch. And what do you think was your biggest, I mean, obviously from the sounds of it, your senior year between just trying to be a guy, and we'll obviously get into it more, but being a guy that's available for a small school, being available to do what friends want, what other people want. Do you think that hindered anything of what you thought your future was going to be as far as in sports?
I don't think it did at all. I think if anything, it just gave me tools to use later on of being willing to kind of step up and help people. I mean, you could say maybe if I hadn't played soccer in the fall, maybe I could have devoted a little bit more time to playing baseball. But honestly, by the time I got to kind of my senior year, I was a little burnt out of doing baseball like in the off season. I kind
Fall
of
ball, no.
Yeah. I was never in a place like where I was able to play travel ball or anything like that. You know, I pretty much played one season, and I would, do things like going out to the field with my dad, and he would throw me BP or hit me ground balls and stuff like that. So I did a little bit of work like that, but I never had, the opportunity to kind of play, club ball or travel ball or anything like that. So really it was kind of like a one season type thing. I mean, it helped. My family lived in Florida for a little bit, so that definitely helped with being able to kind of play it more year round, being able to go out there and play. I think I probably played like a little league season, maybe in the fall, going into winter, and then again maybe like in the spring. Because down in Florida, you can't really play baseball during the summer. You can play it pretty much year round, but those summers are hot, especially in Central Florida. So I think from my senior year, I think I only gained rather than having things take away. And I also, on the academic side of things is when I started to really understand and pursue my passion of writing. I had a great English teacher. Her name is Mrs. Bowler. She was phenomenal at just kind of drawing the best out of me in terms of that writing side of things. It was something where I had gotten to that point where I was like, I probably don't have the physical tools. I think I have the hard work and the ethic to get to playing baseball at the next level, but I didn't know if I quite had that talent. And like I said, I was kind of burned out a little bit too. I had kind of gotten to a point where I was like, I've enjoyed my time playing these sports, and then it allowed me to just kind of let loose my senior year, and I ended up going from probably like a 200, 250 hitter to hitting like 425 or something like that.
It's weird, right?
Because everything just kind of clicked.
Everything before was pressure.
Exactly.
And that's why like people are like, man, you got to interview this high schooler. You got to interview this high schooler. And for me, what I've noticed, and I, of course, didn't go to college, so I don't know the process, but I'm thinking, and you're just putting that icing on the cake of saying, if I start questioning these kids as sophomores and juniors, and don't get me wrong, it's okay to cover and share what they're doing, but if I hit them harder with questions about schools, about stuff like that, does that put in their mind of, man, should I really think about that school? Or should I interview them after they've committed to school so then they could talk about how grateful it is to have that off of their chest. So then they could play a little looser. They could be that person. And I'm not saying it's like a swag, but you have to have that swagger once you already know that you don't have that pressure to go, what am I going to do next? When did you finally decide, like, should I pursue baseball at the next level? Should I do this writing thing? Like, when did you start feeling that as a high schooler? Because I think those are the moments when it gets scary for kids where they're like, I can't be feeling this already. But if you get the feeling, you got to kind of go with it.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a two-part answer, because I think I knew I wanted to do writing or be in a media field of some capacity, whether it was writing or doing something like this or having, some sort of sports talk show or being an anchor on TV or anything. I knew that I wanted to do something like that probably pretty early in high school. I wouldn't say probably not as early as like a freshman, but probably like my sophomore year. About that time is kind of when I discovered, especially on the writing side of things, the teacher that I mentioned, Mrs. Bowler, had a thing. We had creative writing, like writing Fridays, where she would give us a prompt and we would then just kind of write this story from the prompt. And I really just kind of fell in love with that process of like taking just a little short thing and making like a whole story out of it. And once that started to click, I kind of was like, you know what, regardless of whether, like, I hadn't really figured out yet if I wanted to pursue playing, baseball at the college level. But I did know that, like, whenever this journey of playing sports is done, this is what I want to do with my career, like my real work, so to speak. Not to say that being a professional athlete isn't real work, but that obviously it's something that all athletes have to consider. What do I do when this is done?
Yes.
What do I do when I'm out in the, again, to use quotes, the real world?
Well, and especially nowadays, I mean, people are playing it all year round. Most sports, you're doing all this extra work, and then it's that regular schedule when it comes to halt, that's when it's the hardest probably part of people's lives. And seeing other people that might experience a little earlier and give them some good words like, hey, what are you going to do afterwards? Some people are afraid to ask that. So you get into the writing, which is obviously, man, I wish I was a good writer. I have the words, I could say it, but putting pen to paper is where it's hard.
Right.
And I did not do good in English. I'm not afraid to admit it, but I used teachers though to enhance who I was, like, and I think sometimes people forget that when you think of going to a private school and the small school setting, do you think that for yourself adjusted who you could have became or who you could become because of maybe the competition or maybe their efforts? Because that's why I love to cover what we get to cover is I get to share some of those smaller schools that don't get covered. I've said it multiple times on here. I went the first year of doing Wired Axcess plug and play coverage. I went to a Class B school, and they go, "What are you doing here? Why aren't you at West Side?" I said, "Because everybody's at Northwest Side, and your game was voted for me to be here."
Right.
So, like, that's what hurts about what we get to do is the fact that sometimes even the schools don't believe that people should be there to do
That
what
they
we
deserve
do.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And when you think of like that small Christian school, I know here, or your small private school, I know here some compete with only private schools and some compete on the big stage. I mean, you see Marion winning soccer championships and some volleyball, you know.
On our side of the river, it'd be St. Albert, I would say. That's kind of a smaller school that does compete with the big dog, so to speak.
Yeah, so what was that like in Ohio? Did you have that opportunity, or was it just small school versus small school? And how do you think it helped or maybe didn't get you to where you could have been?
Right. I think on the academic side of things, I want to answer that first because that's kind of what I thought of when you were starting to ask the question. Was I think it allowed really a lot more focus for teachers to really focus on those like one-on-one relationships with students, and especially like kind of picking out. Like I said, I'm going to mention her one more time, maybe a few more times, I guess. Mrs. Bowler really just, I guess, saw the potential that I had with writing and was really able to pour into me versus like at a bigger school, regardless of whether it's public versus private. A bigger school doesn't quite afford those same opportunities because it's a lot harder when you've got class sizes. And when I'm saying class sizes, I'm not talking like a graduating class, but like in each class that you have, 20, 30 kids. I mean, there were classes that I had a photography class that has actually paid dividends with the job that I do now, where I had, I think, 4 or 5 other kids in that class. I kid you not.
Dude,
so
that's
I had,
like
yeah.
people don't know, like that's the size different matters, and that's like even my daughter who's at law school at Northern Ohio.
Yep.
That is very important. Don't get me wrong. She tried Creighton. They went off just to score, and they have a bunch of people turn in scores.
Right.
Northern Ohio, and this is why I love that you're from Ohio. Like, it was a blessing. They interviewed and gave her an opportunity that people didn't.
Yeah.
They listened to who she was, and now she's like second in her class, and I know it was just a summer thing, but those matter for law schools over anything else because it's a range from the classmates. It's not a range from D and A, and so that smaller school gives it for academic. What do you think about your sports?
Yeah, well, and kind of on what you were just talking about, I think it gives a little bit more of an opportunity to find those diamonds in the rough. I think when you're going to a bigger school and you're kind of in that, especially public school system, I think sometimes kids can feel like they just don't have an opportunity as early as like middle school, and they feel like they're just kind of suffocated by all these other athletes who are competing, and they don't feel like they really have an opportunity to achieve what they have the talent to do, and they can kind of get overshadowed by maybe some of those athletes who don't get me wrong, are talented. I'm not saying that talented athletes get overshadowed by athletes who aren't talented, but there's not as many opportunities versus when you're at a smaller school, it gives those kids who maybe would have been overlooked at a public school kind of an opportunity to step up. And obviously there's the debate with, private schools of whether, once you do get to that level, if private schools are kind of taking some of those uber talented kids. But I do think especially in the growing up phases, I think it does afford more opportunities for athletes who maybe wouldn't have been given the same opportunities, or who would have been overshadowed or something like that in such a big pool of athletes.
Well, I mean, you talked about your height and all that. I mean, you already know how that affects.
Right.
I mean, if it comes to football with your height, you got to be the scrappiest dude. You got to knock the biggest guy out,
or something
be
like
quick,
that.
or else they're like, okay, we'll take the 6'4" wide receiver.
Right.
His hands are iffy, but he can jump and catch it from someone compared to you could be the little future Wes Welker that was found in Ohio because you went to that small school. So it just, like, I think these are just some things as parents more than anything they lose focus on because of all of the national stuff where it's like big high schools, big colleges, and big names. But if you look back, I mean, there's so many great athletes that have been all the way down to JUCOs that have made it to the pros that people might forget or go, oh, that's where they, like a Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice was not a big college. And look at how many years that dude. And that's, I know I'm a Niners fan, but that's a well-known name.
Well, it's not just a well-known name. It's probably the greatest wide receiver of all time. So
I'll let you say that. I know what I know too, but it's exactly that point of small college. No one knew. And then boom, he gets found by the right person. And I think that's where you and I and other people who report on sports really find the fun of giving someone their flowers before people even know who they are. And all you're doing is just reporting what you're seeing. You're not like especially going, you know what, look at that little guy over there. I'm going to make sure he gets noticed. But when he does what he wanted to do that day and shows up and shows out, you're like, I get to share that. I get to make him, and it's just the real part of it that I think some people lose focus on is it's, again, not about you and I. It's about that story, and you never know the opportunity that kid can get. For those that believe X is done, just know if you are an athlete, X is not done, and you better be getting on it. Instagram's nice, but coaches also know what Instagram isn't. It isn't everything for sports. So you obviously get through that with your high school. What was kind of your last thing to go, baseball's done or baseball's going?
That's a hard question. I would say it just kind of was that feeling of like knowing that I no longer really had that desire really to pursue it anymore, that I really was ready to go all in on pursuing a career in sports media rather than as a professional athlete or even a collegiate athlete. So I would just say just kind of that desire just kind of wasn't really there anymore. Honestly, it's not maybe the most like interesting answer, but I feel like it just kind of waned a little bit, just kind of drifted away. And I was like, you know what, I'm actually really passionate about, whether it's the writing side or the broadcasting side of things. I really want to pursue this. I want to be around sports still. And I knew that this was going to be the better path for that. I could have scratched and clawed and gone through probably a lot of disappointment and maybe gotten to playing, D3 or D2 maybe, or maybe lower level D1 at the highest that I could have reached. But I saw it as like, this is something that I want to do. I mean, I grew up like watching SportsCenter every single morning, like from when I was probably like 5 or 6. I was watching SportsCenter every day.
R.I.P. Bill Rasmussen, who just passed away.
Yeah.
That's 93 years old, creator and the guy from ESPN. Sorry, but
no, all good.
And of course having a dad who's a coach. How was those conversations? Did he set it real for you, like of understanding the levels and maybe some parents don't talk it because they don't want to change what you're feeling or there's different, right? Some parents are. No, you stick with baseball. I'm a baseball coach. You better do it. What was that like?
No, my dad was definitely not on that side of it. It was definitely more of along the lines of kind of, if you want to keep playing it, I'm going to be there. I'm going to support you and that sort of thing. And if you don't, then that's okay. I never felt pressure in the sense of like being forced to do it. I think I felt maybe a little bit more pressure that I put on myself to impress him or like to live up to maybe what I thought he expected. And I think that's kind of why, when I got to my senior year, he wasn't coaching, and I feel like I was able to just kind of see him more like a dad instead of a coach, because that's what he was at that point. I remember him being, by the dugout, I guess outside the dugout in the stands or whatever for most of my games during the baseball season. And I just remember not feeling that pressure of like he's my coach, but like he's just my dad. He's here to watch me. He's here to support me. He's here to cheer for me. Cheer for me when I do something good and encourage me and support me and bring me back up if I mess up with something. So I definitely felt that like support from him. I never felt like I was forced to have to pursue it, or that he was disappointed anyway when I decided that I wanted to give it up. So that, I think that helped with it too. And then just kind of, seeing some of the talents that he had. He's a pastor of a church, and he's kind of been in that field for a while. So just kind of that ability to like speak in front of people, especially, and then kind of like lead people as well on a religious standpoint. So kind of seeing that showed me that like I don't have to continue playing sports. It's fun, and I think another thing too is an outlet for me is working out and going to the gym. Like I'm still active. I'm still, getting my body moving and all that sort of thing without it feel. So it doesn't feel like there's like that absence of sports anymore. Yes, yeah. I'm not playing like competitively. I do a little bit of like, pickup type stuff here or there. Just play, basketball or not so much baseball anymore. Just kick a soccer ball around. I mean, I'm able to do that with my little 19-month-old now. So nice. She's not really kicking it yet, but she's more picking it up and throwing it. So we'll see what sport she ends up playing if she does. But but yeah, I mean, it's definitely a joy, and I'm very fortunate to do the job that I do. And I think college is when I really started to discover just how committed I was to it. And I'm sure maybe we'll get into that a little bit more. But
you talked. And this is one that I know I'm going to grab and hold, is you gave the perspective that some parents who know that coaches have kids on their team don't understand. Because if you've never coached, which I've coached for 12 years for football, I helped with basketball. I know I was a coach, but for me it was more like wrangling the kids to make sure they're where they need to be, because I don't know basketball like football. Right. So I respect the game, but those are the things that people forget is the kids have a lot of pressure. They're like, oh, these kids get everything. They're the coach's son. They just get all this, but they forget about the mental side for the kids. Yeah. And it's not a matter of whether dad puts it on them. It's just the way it goes. You don't want to let dad down. You don't want to let the team down. Then when you let dad down, then the team goes, well, you should be able to do it because you're the coach's son. You should be able to do more. And it's like all those little things all bowled up in one, and you're like, now you get to live it on the other side where you're like, I can share it, talk about it. My dad was the coach until he wasn't. And then I got to experience him one time as father on the sports side of baseball. You talked about all your media and all that. What was kind of you watched ESPN every morning, but what was some of the things that kind of drove you to that? Because I don't know the private side of school. If like, I know for me, they had a media program that I got to take as a senior, where it was a 3-part program. One was HTML. So before you could just use ChatGPT and create all these web pages, you actually had to type things out. So I learned that. The second thing was radio, where we got to do a radio station. And then the third thing was television, where we created commercials and had fun. So that was kind of my starting drive to why I loved it. But it wasn't until like my senior year that I get experience. How did you kind of know some of that for you as far as the media side at a young age? Yeah,
at a young age, I would say it was more the writing side of things. I mean, I would say I was more like driven by dreams to do what I saw on TV, but I didn't have opportunities to really practice that too much at a younger age. It was more the writing side of things, like I talked about earlier, those kind of creative writing Fridays type of things. And that wasn't even sports related, but just kind of writing in general was fun to me. It didn't necessarily have to be about sports. I mean, I wouldn't change covering sports for the world. I wouldn't really be interested in covering anything else. But that was something for sure that developed kind of over my high school from freshman year through senior year. And then other than that, my senior project was to kind of produce like a small like 4-page newspaper or something like that. And it wasn't even in like an actual newspaper format. It was pretty much just like, printer paper that we printed on. Maybe it was a little bigger than that, but it wasn't like a full-size newspaper or anything like that. But that was something that just gave me opportunities to know about like the newspaper producing side of things, like making sure that things look good on a page, that you're using photos that kind of pop off the page, that type of thing. So that allowed me
fonts,
exactly,
color,
titles, actual text, having a byline that says the author and everything like that. So yeah, all of that stuff, and having like I think it's called like a masthead or something like that, like the logo of the paper. Which was actually, I played for a school called the Eagles, and so we called it the Eagle Eye, which was kind of, I think I still have a copy maybe somewhere, like a memory box or something like that at home. But
I like that.
But yeah, that was the thing that really allowed me to hone in a little bit more. For the most part, it was pretty much just writing. I had an opportunity to do a couple of college credit plus courses, which basically went towards my college credits that I needed. And so I think two of those actually were like English composition, like one in English Comp 1, Comp 2, and then beyond that, just kind of practice kind of the writing side of things and developed with that. College is where I more kind of really started to get into like writing for the student paper. The Flyer News of the University of Dayton was a phenomenal opportunity. I had a broadcast performance class with a great professor there by the name of Roy Flynn. Fraser Smith was a great guy there who helped with the writing side of things. Those are two guys who I kind of credit a lot to. I haven't done as much of the broadcasting, but it helps in settings like this, or what I do kind of on the side with my YouTube channel where I talk about college football. So both of those classes, both of those professors, I guess, helped me with both the writing side of things and the reporting side of things, as well as even kind of the broadcast side of things as well.
Well, for you, of course, the recruiting isn't a process, but for you, it's finding. Mm-hmm. How did you end up finding your college that you wanted to go to? What was some things that you felt you needed, and what was some things that through maybe a visit or two that you weren't finding and you found at Dayton?
Yeah, that's a great question. I went on a couple of visits when I was in my senior year of high school, maybe end of junior year. I went to Asbury University, I think, which was in Kentucky, and then Ashland, which is kind of halfway between Columbus and Cleveland in Ohio. I liked both of those schools, and honestly, Asbury, I kind of did like toy with the idea of potentially playing baseball for that school. But again, I wasn't sure. I wasn't honestly sure if I was ready to go too far away from home, and I had an opportunity where a branch campus of Ohio University in Lancaster, Ohio, had an opportunity to go there without having to pay for tuition or anything like that. Like, it was a free year, and if I kept the grades up, I could have gone for a second year. So my family was still living in the Columbus area at the time, and then I think I took like my first semester or maybe 2 semesters of college courses there. And then my dad got a job at a church out in Xenia, which is in the Dayton, Ohio area. And that was where I then had the opportunity to go to Dayton. But the reason I started at OU is I really wanted a program that was prestigious when it comes to producing sports media professionals. And OU, at least, especially in Ohio and in that kind of part of the Midwest specifically, and I would say even honestly nationwide, Ohio University is really one of the top programs for producing in terms of sports media, especially writing. And then when my family moved over to Dayton, kind of wanted to save a little bit on paying for room and board and stuff like that. So which has helped in the long run in terms of student loans and all that sort of stuff. So, and I also knew somebody like Dan Patrick, for example, had graduated from the University of Dayton, so I knew that there was like this pedigree there in terms of their media program. And honestly, I wouldn't trade having gone to the University of Dayton for anything. I mean, I was there probably one of the best times ever to be there with that basketball team. Obi Toppin, Jalen Crutcher, Anthony Grant head coach. That was almost beat Kansas in the Maui Invitational Final. Was a perfect 18-0 in A10 Atlantic 10 play that year in A10 play. We're going to be, favorites to win the A10 in Brooklyn that year, and then probably be a 1 or at worst a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. I mean, would have gotten an at-large bid regardless of how the A10 tournament went. And then obviously that all fell apart because of COVID. So that was disappointing, but it was a great time to be there. I mean, there was, just kind of the opportunities to talk to athletes who were performing at such a high level. A guy like Obi Toppin, who I was able to interview kind of during his draft process before he gets drafted by the New York Knicks. And it was a lottery pick, I think top 10 or top 8 even. A guy like an Adam Troutman, who plays tight end for the Denver Broncos and New Orleans Saints previously, who was drafted out of Dayton. A coach like an Anthony Grant, who is respected among some of the best coaches in college basketball for what he achieved at VCU before and then at the University of Dayton. So
2 great programs.
Exactly. So being able to just kind of tap into guys like that, like, yeah, it's one of those things where it's great to sit here and be able to be like, oh, I've talked to those guys. But really, to me, I view it more as like being able to talk to athletes of that caliber. And there were some really good like volleyball players and women's soccer players and men's soccer players that have gone on to play, semi-pro or professional in their sports as well. So being able to like just kind of tap into the minds of those athletes, I think really turned me into a better reporter as well, being able to ask better questions, being able to kind of look at things from both a very broad scope and also really, tight in on the tiny details. So I think all of those things really just kind of prepared me for where I'm at now.
When you look at the university level of what you were able to do, how well was it orchestrated for you to be able to be a part of the media side, and how was some things that you kind of had to almost battle for because there is only so much that is available? How was that experience for you?
Honestly, it was fairly easy, I would say, in terms of the competitive side of things. I mean, there were people who would like want to report on a game here or there, and I think a lot of them probably just kind of wanted to be able to go to a Dayton basketball game and be able to kind of go behind the scenes and that sort of thing just for the fun of it. So really stepping into a role, I stepped up as a sports writer for the Flyer News staff there on the sports side of things, because I was somebody who would kind of want to go to as much as I could, not just go to the big games or especially the basketball games, because if you know anything about Dayton, I mean they pack the house.
Yes.
UD Arena is always packed, and the way I like to compare it, and I'll do it a little differently for this audience here. It might be a smaller fan base. It's just numerically the case, but the same passion that I saw from Ohio State fans growing up, and that obviously our viewers and listeners here have for Nebraska football, that's the same level of passion that Dayton fans bring to basketball. Basketball is their lifeblood there.
It's their church.
It is. It really is. It's a cathedral of college basketball.
Yes.
UD Arena is. Obviously, we've had some football, great football talent. I mean, Chuck Knoll graduated from the University of Dayton. John Gruden obviously played at the University of Dayton. So don't get me wrong, we've had some great football minds and athletes in other sports, but basketball is king there.
We always love seeing that Dayton on that 64 team roster there.
Right,
so,
right,
I mean,
right.
They've done some great things, and I think this is what I love about it is it's also just telling the part of like the smaller colleges where you can still get that big feeling, even though it's in a small. I mean, because I know I went up to a South Dakota game to watch Will Kyle, when he was early up there, and dude, it was packed house. It was you felt like you were at a Husker game as far as the loudness, because yes, they don't have 80,000 there,
Right.
but they make every square foot covered. The standing on the top and on
Standing
the edge,
room only.
standing room only. Like that stuff happens at some of these colleges that are seeing the success, and just hearing it from your side as far as the reporter, I think people also forget that if you don't take it by the horns when you're in it and try to attend as much as possible and do as much as possible, you're not preparing yourself for the outer world, because the money isn't what I'm not saying that you can't make it, because we obviously are making what we do, but it isn't like these millions of dollars that these players are getting
Definitely
paid,
not.
right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so you have to be willing to be that guy. Yep, I'm going to take that.
Yeah.
Yep. And especially now with a kid, you're really feeling that heat with everything going up. It's going up for everybody. It's not just one person, but you're still that guy that is going, I'll take that. I'll take that. You need that. So then you get done with college. Like, what was kind of your thoughts? What was your hopes and dreams, and where are you at in those hopes and dreams?
Yeah, real quick, just on that, before I answer kind of where I'm at with hopes and dreams, I think I've fallen in love with the grind of it, too. I genuinely love,
It's scary, okay? Wives, it's scary, okay? And then obviously you're married, I'm married for 25 years. It's scary.
Right.
Because on the time that we have to be at sports, it's time for kids after school,
Right.
family after school. So I commend you on that. As long as you make sure family still is on that top.
It's
which
definitely
obviously I know
number
in our
one.
conversation we had, because that's how we came up with 1 p.m.
Right. Yeah, exactly. To get back to what I was saying, I would just say I kind of just covering a variety of sports too. I loved covering a soccer game as much as I did those big basketball games or the football games at UD. I enjoyed covering the volleyball games just as much, even a couple of softball games here or there while I was at UD. So I really just started to love those, and so I think that drove me into what I'm doing now, and that helps me obviously covering high school sports. There's a variety of sports. It's obviously we're kind of getting into that season where the big hitters are football, and as we see in this area of the country, volleyball is obviously huge as well and only growing. So that's kind of where I kind of just fell in love with it in terms of the grind of it and going to a game, even if it's every single night a week, and knowing that I still have that time during the day at home. That's the blessing about this job is I'm able to work from home during the day and then just go out to a game in the evening. So that's definitely a big factor. I'm sure I wouldn't probably go to as much as I do if I didn't have that time during the day to be home. But to answer your question, I just kind of wanted to speak on that a little bit. But to answer your question in terms of what my dreams were, honestly, I was just kind of ready to get my foot in the door wherever that was, whatever that looked like. I mean, I knew it would be pretty much what I'm doing now is being a high school sports reporter. I knew it's a tough field to break into, and I knew that I was going to kind of have to cast the big net. You know, obviously it would have been nice to stay home close to family in Ohio, but I knew to really increase my chances at getting a job and getting into the field straight out of college, which thankfully I was fortunate to be able to do. I graduated in December and started out here in February. So real quick turnaround coming out of college, but I knew I'd have to cast a wide net. I mean, I applied to a job out in Salem, Oregon. Like I didn't care where I was going after college. I just knew I wanted to keep doing it, and then I wanted to give myself every opportunity to do it. So my dreams were just kind of to get into it. I mean, obviously there are those big dreams of working for a big company like an ESPN or like a national, like The Athletic or something like that, a national publication. There's always those dreams that are kind of in the back of the mind, but my real aspirations are really just to be the best reporter that I can be, and now the best editor that I can be, because I was able to step into that position after the previous sports editor at the Nonpareil went into another job. So stepping into those roles, I mean, that's kind of, I mean, that goes into like my faith that I have of just whatever you do, be the best that you can be, and that doesn't mean to be the best and like outshine or overcome others, but just being the best version of yourself.
Facts.
You know, I'm not trying to be better than the writers that are here or that are at the Omaha World Herald or Lincoln Journal Star or the papers that we have in Iowa. I'm not trying to be better than any of those writers. I'm just trying to be the absolute best writer and editor that I can be. And if I do that, if I take the steps to do that, then I know that the rest of it is just going to fall into place. So I would say at this point, that's kind of my dreams. I mean, my dreams are always to cover big events that I've been fortunate to cover, like the College World Series when it's here in town every year, obviously. March Madness when it was here a couple years ago, and hopefully, again, when it's back here in March, in this coming March, to be back covering that again, or even the college, you know, when I think Creighton hosted four teams in the NCAA tournament for volleyball. So obviously my dreams are to cover things like that, or to have somebody like a Lily Denton from St. Albert cross country who's now running at Texas, or somebody like Landon Bloom who's playing at Woodbine football, 8-player, and going to play at Penn State then at the collegiate level after this year. So those are kind of, I would say, the dreams, is just being able to be around those either big time athletes or just big time stories in general, or big events. I would say those are kind of my dreams.
When you talk about the field that you're in and what we get to do, and you're graduating from college, who or what or how gave you some knowledge of what it's going to be like outside of the college realm? Because college realm, like you said, you get to live at home, you get to do this. You think about money, but you're really not, because you're thinking about, I'm continuing to grow. How did you get the mindset to understand what post-college was going to be like in this field?
In this field, I would say, I mentioned him earlier, a professor of mine that I'm still in touch with, and I speak to his classes sometimes, actually, is Fraser Smith. He was an amazing professor of mine, specifically in sports writing, and I think maybe media writing or something like that. I know sports writing was my favorite class with him, because it really developed my skills in that area. So I would say just the way he taught and the way he gave us opportunities to to actually go out and cover a game as an assignment for that class. It wasn't just doing like homework or taking tests and stuff like that. It was actually going out and being able to like cover a game. To me, that was, experience is the greatest teacher. There's no greater teacher than actually going out and doing something. So I would say that was kind of the biggest thing that I took from there, and just the availability that he gave to that. And whenever I had a question, him just being able to answer it and just being able to help me develop as a writer. We also had a workshop of sorts where there was a graduate who, I think Steve Bulpett was his name, who was a graduate of the University of Dayton, who was working at the Boston Globe, who came in and did a little workshop for us there. So a big credit to him as well, just for that. That kind of, it was like 4 sessions or something like that. It wasn't a whole lot, but those 4 sessions were massively impactful. And then in terms of getting into the field, I forget what it's called, but the person who kind of helps get you into jobs on the outside, I forget what the official title is for that right now, but a guy by the name of Pat Enright really helped me kind of get like an internship when I was in college. I think between junior and senior year, and then also with getting those professional opportunities and just kind of helping know how to build a network and that sort of thing.
Then of course you throw out the web for your job. How does the metro area of Omaha become a place? How did this all become home?
Yeah, by living here, I would say, and being around the communities.
You put in the application where?
Right. I put it into the high school sports reporter position at the time. I think they were still technically Bellevue Leader for Playing Times of Gretna Breeze, but pretty soon after I got there, they all merged into Sarpy County Times anyways. So I applied there. It was funny, actually, the people from the Nonpareil sports staff, because there wasn't actually technically like officially a sports editor over the Nonpareil. It was kind of the sports editor, or at the Sarpy County Times. There wasn't one there. So the one at the Nonpareil was kind of the one who oversaw like hires and stuff like that for the Sarpy County Times. So got contact from like a managing editor and then the sports editor, and had a couple interviews, and they obviously went pretty well, and they wanted me out here. And again, I think that process, I think I probably put in my application in like October or November of the year that I was graduating in December. Heard back from them, had a couple of interviews, maybe one in December. I know I had at least 1 or 2 of them in January as well, and then ended up coming out here. And it was the only one that really, I had heard from one other paper somewhere a little bit closer, but then they were kind of like, well, we're not really in the position right now to be able to hire a new reporter. So that one kind of fizzled out. I didn't really hear from anywhere else. So I just kind of jumped to the first opportunity. It's not like I had like a whole,
but that's what
whole host of
college
options.
students need to understand too, because sometimes
they're waiting for the perfect one.
I got to share Mikey Gow's story.
Right.
And he is one to admit. He thought it was D1 or bust. Mm-hmm. And when you have those mindsets of Omaha, I don't even know where that is, and you shy away from it,
right? It
obviously isn't going to get you where you are. You, of course, make it here, but knowing what you know about newspapers and the slowly portrayal where it's going away and they're going more digital, did you just feel because you are younger you could fit that role because the digital age is who you are and you're able to find ways to make it? Or how did you know that you can stick it out with a newspaper and still make it? Because I'm pretty sure in that field, it's not easy to go, I can make what I want and still do what I love.
Yeah, I would say there was definitely a little bit of fear, breaking into that and understanding that, there is, it's newspapers is a little bit, I don't like to call it a dying industry, but definitely one that in terms of actual print isn't as common now. So yeah, there was definitely a little bit of fear with that, or a little bit of just trepidation or reluctance maybe. But I also knew I kind of just wanted to get my foot in the door in terms of writing. And I had done some things, I think in high school and a little bit in college, where I wrote for like an online fan site called Scarlet and Game. Actually, it was a fan site dedicated to Ohio State through Fansided. So wrote for them, and so I knew that I could write more for that online style, that I had the experience of having done that. And yeah, adjusting to this role, I would say at first when I was just at the Sarpy Times, I wasn't really too focused on it, but stepping into more of the editor role and having kind of these expectations or even requirements about the type of content we're supposed to produce, having a certain amount of assets that go online or stories, we call them assets. So a certain amount of stories or collections of photos or videos that go online each day has allowed me to kind of see the bigger picture of that. And that I don't think it's, yes, we're called a newspaper, but really we're a news publication, and we publicize online as well. So really it's more we produce for online, and we use what we produce online for the newspaper rather than trying to produce for a newspaper for a print product and then just squeezing it online.
I like that.
So it's kind of flipping that mindset, and that's something that even in, I haven't been in this industry for a long time, but in the few years that I have been, that I've kind of flip that mindset myself, because I was in that place where I'm like, okay, I'm trying to fill the newspaper and trying to, make sure that that's the first priority. But now it's like, I think it's always going to be there, the newspaper, because it's always going to be, no matter how technologically advanced we get as a society, it's always going to be something that people want to, whether they want to frame it or they just want to have that, experience of, turning through the pages of a newspaper. I think it'll always be some sort of at least novelty. But I also understand that, people, when you have information, a tap of the finger away, you're gonna go to that instead, just because of the, I guess, society that we live in today. Availability, yes. Yeah. So really it's for me just understanding that, you adapt or you get left behind. And so as long as I'm able to adapt, which I feel like I've done a pretty good job of, I am not really too concerned about working for a newspaper, because again, to me, it's more of a news publication rather than a newspaper.
Well, of course, before we get you out of here and give a little knowledge to our followers, our followers are normally Nebraska preps, which obviously is also a connection of some Iowa preps. Mm-hmm. Explain to my following of how they find you. What is it that you get to do on your side of it, and especially now with your new roles, and that way they understand when they're looking for Peter Burtnett on the internet and they're seeing you, they know what they're getting, and it's not this collage of, he does this. No, he is dead serious about covering, because I know for me, for Nebraska, I have to cover both sides, both teams evenly. Yeah. I can't do one or the other. I'm going to tell you what the stat is, but it's not always easy, because sometimes there's a high winner where it's 70-14. I still have to do my job for what I do. Let's get you out of here on that and how they can find you.
Yeah, so you can find me, all across social media at Peter Burtnett, Burtnett. Obviously writing for the Nonpareil, which is spelled Nonpareil. So you can find me there. Nonpareil online is just where you can find us online. And it's our main focus, I would say, is on our city schools, which is Abraham Lincoln, city schools in Council Bluffs, Abraham Lincoln, Lewis Central, St. Albert, and Thomas Jefferson. We've also got Heartland Christian, Iowa School for the Deaf as well. And then we kind of go a little bit into this area in Southwest Iowa. It's a little more local, close to us, within about a 25, 30-mile radius. You got Trainer, Underwood, Riverside, Glenwood, Tri-Center, HSCW. And then we've kind of, since I've taken over, we're kind of trying to get back to what we used to do before I got there. I kind of, just by looking through the years of, over the years, what we've done, covering a pretty wide area. And part of that was because we were able to kind of, work in tandem with the staff of the Omaha World Herald. We're a little bit more separate from them now. If they write something about Creighton or Nebraska that's kind of relevant to us on our side in Iowa, then obviously we'll take that content, and vice versa. I've written a couple things that are more Iowa focused that they've taken before. But then we've got some schools like Woodbine, Logan Magnolia, Missouri Valley, Harlan, East Mills, Fremont Mills, and kind of that area a little bit further out that we try to get a little bit of coverage to as well. So really it's all sports as well. I don't, obviously there are the sports that drive more traffic. That's just the simple truth of it. But I do like to get attention to all the sports, especially because cross country, for example, we have the reigning boys 1A, Class 1A state champions in Riverside. They've got some of the guys from that team coming back. And we also had an individual state champion in Lily Denton, who, like I mentioned earlier, is now running at Texas. But there's a lot of talent in cross country. There's obviously talent in football. I mean, Woodbine reached the 8-player championship game, and they've got a Power 4 Big Ten commit on that team. So, and volleyball, there's some talent across the board as well. So, really looking forward to this fall sports season and even getting out there for maybe a little bit of higher class golf, boys golf in the higher class 4A plays in the fall, and then girls tennis as well, and a little bit of girls swimming as well. So a lot of different sports going on right now. Again, football and volleyball are the big hitters, but we've still got some of those other ones. And yeah, I mean,
some love.
Yeah, exactly. And then in terms of outside of the more like professional side of things, I have a YouTube channel where I just kind of talk about college football a little bit, trying to fit that into my busy schedule is a little bit tougher, but certainly over the next couple weeks as we get ready for the college football season to kick off, going to be trying to ramp that up a little bit, producing a few more videos to kind of preview the season ahead in college football. So that's College Football Talk. It's on YouTube. You also can find it just by clicking, I think I have a link to it in my profile on X. So.
Well, I greatly appreciate you joining the show. I appreciate you giving a lot of different sides that hopefully one parent, one athlete, or maybe even a media person that's looking to get into what we do can take some pieces from. Remember, all we want you to do is share this, like, follow, do all that. But also just remember, these are stories that people can use and also advise others. If you notice someone that might be struggling with a sport, have them watch some of these. These will just help them understand they're not alone. That's always the biggest thing that we always want to stress is through every situation, someone's experienced it. You just got to reach out and see who it is. Once again, I appreciate you for joining us, and we'll catch you next time on Wired Axcess. See ya.